Hey guys, welcome back to Gecko Tech and Gaming. So today we're going to take a look at the X2 Medium and Mini, and later on the video I want to go over some information that came out from Endgame Gear about the XM2W. So wait till the end of the video, we'll go over that, but for now let's look at these mice. So when it comes to the mice themselves, really, there's nothing too out of the ordinary for 2022 here. It's got all of the top tier components that you expect from a gaming mouse. One thing that does pop out is the option to turn motion sync on and off inside of Pulsar's Fusion program. Now, motion sync ships out with all 3395 sensors, and basically what it does is V-Sync, but instead of your monitor, it's for your mouse. So what this means is the polling rate from the mouse syncs up to the polling rate in the USB port in your computer, so that on paper you get a smoother tracking experience. However, people notice that there is technically a 1 millisecond increase in the latency, which frankly is barely anything. 1 millisecond, most people aren't even gonna feel that. But Pulsar is giving you the option of turning it on or off. So it's up to you. Do you want a smoother, technically more accurate tracking experience, or do you want it to be as low latency as possible? And ultimately, that's up to you. When it comes to the buttons, the mouse 1 and mouse 2 are very poppy. They actually have a very crispy sound to them. Very minimal pre and post travel. They feel very good on top of that. The side buttons have a little bit of pre and post travel, honestly what you expect from side buttons, but they also sound very nice. The scroll wheel is fairly lightly tensioned, but it does have very well-defined steps, so it works very well for games. And the scroll wheel click is actually fairly sturdy, not too mushy. It's got a nice little bit of a dampened sound to it. I like it, it's good. They've got white PTFE skates. They are very, very smooth skates here. I don't think you really need to replace these unless you have a brand you specifically prefer. The coating is also very nice. It's a matte coating. It's very smooth, but it doesn't pick up fingerprints either, while also being pretty grippy. Both of these mice maintain a low weight. Considering how well built they are, I don't get any flex or squeaking. Even if I squeeze unreasonably hard, even the bottom plate with these large cutouts, if I squeeze them, I mean, I'm not really getting much flex on that either. So honestly, they did a really good job on the build quality side of things, considering how low weight they are. Now, going back to the sizes, there is a medium size and a small size. I did notice that I had a better time fingertip gripping the Mini, because obviously it's a Mini, and I had a little bit more fun with claw grip with the medium size. Now I have 17.5 by 10.5 centimeter hands, so take that into consideration depending on what grip style you have. One thing I would say is if you like to palm grip your mouse, these aren't really the best for it. You could palm grip the medium, but even then, I tried and it's just not really great for it. But these are really made with gaming in mind, and most specifically first-person shooters, and these are really made for the claw or fingertip grip users. So it's not really made for that kind of comfortable, just everyday palm grip use. Now, there is a very obvious comparison to be made to the Endgame Gear XM mouse, which is a very similar size and shape as the X2. However, there are some very key differences to note when it comes to the shape. For one, there's a much more drastic inward curve on the XM1, whereas the X2 is more flat. It's not perfectly flat, but it's pretty close to perfectly flat. Honestly, a good way of looking at this, the X2 is a mix of the sides of a G Pro with the hump and profile of an XM1. There is also a little bit of a comfort groove on the Mouse 1 and Mouse 2, whereas the XM1 doesn't have any comfort groove at all on Mouse 1 and Mouse 2. It's just a slope straight down to the end. So those are things to consider. I wouldn't say that one is better or worse than the other. It just really depends on what you want from your mouse and what type of shape that you prefer it to have. All right, let's move on to giving the X2 Mini and Medium a grade. They are close enough that really the grades are going to be exactly the same across the board, so I'm not going to be splitting up the score here. Now, coming from the perspective of gaming, I give the X2 a 9 out of 10. Really, it offers everything that you need from an FPS gaming mouse. It's got that top tier sensor, good switches with the ability to reduce that debounce delay. Really, the only way that this could be better for gaming is if it had optical switches. Next, for everyday use, I give this a 5 out of 10. There's nothing about this that really makes me think, oh, I want to use this when I'm editing or when I'm just doing day-to-day stuff. Is it bad? It's not necessarily bad, but it doesn't give you anything that makes your day-to-day life or convenience better. The DPI button is on the bottom side of the mouse, so you can't really use that as an extra button for productivity or shortcuts. And there's no place to stow away that USB dongle when you're not using it. So even though the Mini is honestly a pretty decent size for throwing in a bag or something and taking it with you, it'd be a bit easy to lose that dongle. This is a really good desktop setup gaming mouse, but for just like everyday use or for practical purposes like productivity, it's usable, but it's not going to do you any good. Next is cost to value, and for the X2, I give it a 6 out of 10. At $95, it's definitely more affordable than something like Razer's Pro line of mice or a Logitech G Pro mouse. However, when a mouse like the Aria can exist at $85 while offering significantly more practical use, I just have a hard time saying that this has high value to it. If you're just looking for a gaming mouse, yes, this could be exactly what you're looking for. If you just want this shape that's wireless, that's a moderately low weight, this is it. When it comes to actual cost to what you get with the mouse, there's not that much going on with this mouse that makes me think that you're getting a great deal. So it's fair, but nothing that great. Next, for my personal opinion on the mouse, I give it a 7 out of 10. This is a really good FPS gaming mouse, but there's nothing that really pops out. There's nothing like particularly special about it. It's just a good, solid mouse. However, having two optional sizes definitely bumps my score up a little bit because it gives the consumer more option, and that's a very good thing in my opinion. So yeah, it doesn't like particularly wow me, but if you're looking for a claw grip wireless mouse and you want a specific size, this is an excellent choice. So that brings the total overall grade to 6.8 out of 10 for the X2 Mini and Medium. So do you want to get an X2 or do you want to wait and hopefully get an XM2W? There's a couple things to consider. First off, obviously, huge delays. XM2W is still not out and it's scheduled Q4, but even then, at this point, I'm not gonna rely on that date. Now, even then, the X2 has also been pretty hard to get my hands on. I got this, the Mini, straight away on the pre-order, but the medium size I had to dig around for, and it took quite a bit longer for me to get this one in hand. And even then, they're still not readily in stock. So you might not even be able to get an X2 while you're waiting for an XM2W to be released. However, there is a silver lining in the delays to the XM2W in that they're able to implement a new switch, the Kale GX switch. What this means is you get that low latency, similar to an optical switch, but it's still a mechanical switch. Another positive of the XM2W is that it's going to be pretty future-proof. The MCU in that mouse is going to be able to handle much more than 1000 hertz polling rate, meaning that on release, it's going to be 1000 hertz. But they're planning on releasing a dongle later down the line for 4000 hertz potentially. So that future-proofs the XM2W quite a bit. So what should you choose? If you're not so worried about the debounce delay, if you're fine with the Kale 8s, then the X2. You get to choose between two different sizes. The XM2W is only coming out in one size. So if you specifically want a Mini, this is really what you want to get. Also, the sides are flat on the X2. So if you dislike the aggressive curves on the XM1 shape, then the X2 is a good option. However, if you want a mouse that's going to be pretty darn future-proof and you like the sound of the switches having that optical performance with just a regular mechanical switch, the XM2W may be worth it to wait for. Pre-orders don't ship out until Q4 later this year, which means that purchasing off the website is probably not going to happen until, honestly, next year is what I would assume. So it would be a little bit of a long haul. You should probably take all of that into consideration before you get an X2, just because that is another option that's potentially a better option depending on what your priorities are. Personally, I was actually considering canceling the XM2W pre-order, but now that I heard the information about the future increase to the pulling rate as well as the new Kale GX switches, I'm leaving it in place. I'm really interested to see how that plays out. But anyway, thanks again for stopping by. You guys take care, God bless, and I'll see you on the next one, okay? Later.